So we're here today to have a bit of a chat about your company Idea Science and a little bit about the current marketing climate as well. So I guess best place to start is at the start. Could you just give us a bit of an introduction? Tell us a bit about yourself and the journey that led you to start Idea Science.
My name is Peter Drum, of course. I started my career as an engineer, actually. I used to work for an aluminium company, mostly doing automation of heavy manufacturing systems. So very different from where I've ended up now. I've done some quite interesting things, but the majority of it's been consulting. Consulting to businesses. A lot of it's been around customer-focused business systems. Started doing that around 2000, so 20 years ago now, would you believe? And I was doing that for a few years, based in Australia, but traveling quite a bit to meet the needs of various customers throughout the Asia Pacific region. And that journey took me over to the US, to the head office of the company I was working with at the time, Onyx Software, to run a financial services practice, both product and services over in the US. I moved into some different roles over there and eventually started my first business over there. I did that in late 2005. It was largely working with some of my former clients as well as some new ones in similar areas. The premise behind that was that we wanted to be able to provide, and it was myself and a business partner, wanted to be able to provide a much more kind of end-to-end holistic consulting service than what I'd typically been doing on behalf of a software vendor. Then in 2008, I decided to move back to Australia and start a business down in Australia. That's the one that became Idea Science.
And so what was the inspiration behind Idea Science? What gap did you see in the market that you really wanted to fill?
The biggest gap, I think, was there were a lot of very large consulting organizations. They're very expensive. They tend to have a very kind of hierarchical nature in the services they deliver. So you'll get some time with some very senior people, and then you'll get a lot of people who will come in after those folks to be able to implement solutions. They can deliver some wonderful results, but that's not the right model for everybody. There are many organizations that would prefer to work with a smaller organization that delivers them a much more tailored experience. And that's really what we tried to do. So we wanted to be able to do that in a very similar way. So we wanted to be able to help in deliver very holistic services, but more of a one-to-one experience, a personalized experience that you would get with a very large consulting organization. With people our size, many times you'll get organizations that really just specialize in, for example, marketing or technology implementation or maybe some support, but we try to do all of that. So we'll be able to help people provide a full end-to-end solution.
Is there anything else that you think is unique to Idea Science?
I think there is, and part of this is about what it is that we try to create for the people who work with us. So we do have a well-defined set of values. I think in no particular order, there's things like accountable and honest and trust, focus, selflessness. So things that are very much values around not being kind of ego-driven or about us. And then there are things like passion, curiosity, and collaborative that are very much about the experience that we want our people to have first and foremost in terms of working in a very dynamic and rewarding environment. And then that's what obviously the experience that we try to deliver to our customers as well. My personal favorites, by the way, are passion and curiosity. I look for that in everyone we work with. And I think if you don't have passion about what you do, then you're probably not going to enjoy it very much. And our customers aren't going to enjoy it very much.
Because marketing and sales, it is a thing that is constantly changing. There's always something new. Why is it so important for businesses to take sales and marketing systems and the automated tools that are coming out so seriously?
I think there's two ways to think about this. Number one is you obviously need to keep abreast of the changes of technology and the direction that business processes and so forth move. So it's very easy to get left behind, and there will always be challenges to your organization, no matter what field you're in. And if you're not keeping abreast of those, you don't necessarily need to replicate everything that somebody tries, because people will try and fail quite often. But you should be aware of what they're doing. The second thing is obviously there's a massive challenge to do more with less. The current situation is only going to exacerbate that, of course. But when you have that, then things like automation come into play all the time. in our world, in a highly developed and fairly affluent country, for example, if we're competing globally against organizations, then the only way we do it, we can't obviously do it based on low labor costs, those sort of things. We can do it based on differentiating the quality of our offerings and those things that are softer. But otherwise, much of what we have to do is actually to be able to automate and be more efficient and deliver more value.
And you touched on as well, this year things have shifted a bit. How is the focus for your clients that you have at the moment shifted? And what do you think the long-term effects of this are going to be?
Let's start with the first part first. How are things? Well, in the early days of the COVID-19, the pandemic hitting around the world, and we do work with organizations around the world, we saw essentially a ripple effect. So folks in Southeast Asia were hit first, and then into Europe, and then eventually into South America, and we work across all of those regions. And what's the biggest impact, of course, is the inability to be able to conduct operations in the way you would have before. I can't do too much face to face, can't have a lot of the in-person events and those sorts of things. So a lot of marketing teams still relied very heavily on that, still do now actually. So
Yeah.
there's an immediate need to change the way you're doing things. And those things may or may not be permanent, but there was an immediate need to do it. And if we're looking right now, we're approximately 6 months or so in, a little bit over that. And that time's gone very quickly, but we're a little over that time, and nothing has really recovered. And clearly, some things have come back to a semblance of normal, but you can't run very large scale marketing events, for example. The expectation that the customers still want to go to retail centres as their primary source or channel of business is not there, right? You're not doing that yet. So there's a lot of these things that are still in this temporary mode, I think. And helping our customers across that is probably the first thing that we tried to do, and help them to establish digital channels to market. Help their contact centers adapt. People being able to work from home more remotely was a big focus immediately. And then adding some extra tools that didn't already have them to be able to help, things like chat and chatbots and those sorts of things came into play to be able to help people interact digitally some more. As you look longer term, though, this is only going to accelerate a lot of the trends that we've already seen. So in Australia, for example, where we've always tracked somewhere between 2 and 5 years behind, say, the United States when it comes to adoption of things like online shopping and those sorts of things, that's going to accelerate. We've already seen a drastic accelerated or increasing in the volume of online shopping and online retail already. Those things will be here to stay, I'm pretty sure. I think the other thing that's going to be a big shift longer term is that people were trying to provide a much more exclusive or refined experience for their customers. And it was difficult to work out the right way to do that when there was still a very heavy reliance on retail channels, face-to-face retail channels. I think this has just drastically accelerated it. So people are trying to say, well, my first choice is going to be a digital channel and a digital experience.
I guess that sort of helps touch on my next question, which is, what is the most important thing for businesses to be considering right now in terms of marketing and sales?
Probably depends on the businesses. So some businesses are clearly in that domain where they're just trying to recover, or even in some cases trying to survive. If you're in that situation, then you're going to be in a very different place than many others. Let's imagine that you've gone past that point, though. You really do need to be looking at what's the next generation, next scale of customer experience that you're expecting your customers to adopt and all of your team to be able to support. That's probably the biggest focus area. So most of our most significant customers, they're already thinking that way. They're basically saying, once all this pandemic ends, things open up, then what type of experience do we want to have, and how is that going to give us a competitive advantage?
Excellent.
And that's what we start with. I don't think we touched on too much the different groups in our organization. We have a group that specializes in customer experience strategy, and a group that specializes in marketing and marketing automation, and then finally a group that specializes in technology. And we'll sometimes start in one place or another with customers, but right now much of the activities around that customer experience strategy, and then how marketing and technology supports that.
Great, that's wonderful. And I guess just to sum everything up that we've spoken about, and to sum up what Idea Science does, are there 5 words that you could use to describe your company
we make ideas become reality. That's
Perfect.
probably the 5-word shot. Yeah.
All right. I think that sums it up very well. Thank you so much for your time, Peter. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Been wonderful talking with you, Claire.